Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Something
I
didn't
forgot
want us to talk.
what I was saying, but yes, I remember. So basically, it's so, yes, one needs to leave this little patch of culture and land to initiate themselves into a wider, bigger picture of different cultures and different, wider horizons and things like that. So, but it wasn't so easy to, make up your mind when money got devaluated, institutions fall, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and that's what I mean. And just by accident, I ended up meeting an English girl, and she brought me over, and that was in.
So you met an English girl in Georgia?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Ella. So, and then we got married, and then I came to London in 1999 to Whitechapel. That's where she lived, and then I stayed on and on and on and on, and up until my parents grown so old that I had to come back and take care of them because I got no siblings. So yeah, but I never actually wanted. I never wanted to come to England because it was an island, and I was more attracted to France actually because of, I don't know. I thought, well, I like French apple pies, and French women looked sexy, and I like French painters as well. And so they like wine, and they know more wine. And I thought, well, in England, I didn't knew much, Shakespeare, Margaret Thatcher, Benny Hill, things like that. So it was
a
not
hell of
really,
a combination. Margaret Thatcher, Shakespeare, and Benny Hill.
Well, I mean, that's what.
Yeah, great. I like it. It's a nice thought. Thinking of them together, that would be quite an interesting
conversation. And a rainy day. So
on a rainy day, yeah, stuck inside
a rainy day
somewhere.
So it didn't really, I mean, Shakespeare was so remote and and so old Saxon, Anglo-Saxon that, I thought, well, I wouldn't be able to find his traces there. So Margaret Thatcher was not my cup of tea. Well, I didn't know much about the woman, but I knew that my school director was always making herself look like her, and her hair was like her, and she was teaching English, and she was reading, Beowulf to us and things like Paradise Lost of Milton and things like that. And I was like, oh, no. I didn't like my director, so I thought, well. So, but it happened that, and luckily, it's England, because I actually discovered England to myself, and it was a discovery, and I'm lucky. Well, lucky, and that it was in France, for example. It should have been England. So I came to England, and gosh, I wish I was there again. But I don't know when I'm going to come back. I don't know.
So, well, I guess you got the family responsibility, right? So
yes, and everything. I mean, and I'm when I came there, I was 24. I was not the guy. I've never been a yes man. I wouldn't. I'm a daydreamer. I wouldn't get a job, or I wouldn't rent a flat, and I wouldn't. That was not for me. Things were more easy for me. I had a wife. She had a flat. There was a single payment. We had no mortgage. Then we separated, but we stayed friends, and I started squatting, and life got more interesting, and I had lovely squats on Princelet Street in Spitalfield, and
Oh yeah.
on Drum Street, and in front of the Whitechapel Art Gallery. That was old roundabout. Now it's gone. Do you remember that old
Yeah.
roundabout?
Yeah. I used to live just on Brick Lane for a while.
Yeah. So there was this roundabout, and the little street on the roundabout that accommodated 3 houses and 1 Barclays Bank was called Drum Street.
Okay.
So there, and then we moved down to Close Square. In front of Wilton's, still stands that old house, church house. And so, those 3 squats and things like that. Then I ended up living in a bed seat. So I actually came to a very middle class sort of place when I came to England. I had a job, I had a wife, I had a flat, things like that. And then suddenly I started sliding down all the way back to where, my parental flat, with no penny left, and as if nothing has changed. But, I've got less hair and less teeth. And so I don't know if I'm going to come back to England. I wouldn't get a job, or
Yeah.
So if I come, I only will come to see my, who I mean, friends of mine.
So
yeah.
were you painting or into art, doing any of that before you came to England? What
Oh
was
yeah,
the story
yeah,
that
yeah,
was happening
yeah.
already?
Since age 6, I've been
Okay.
into painting. I've been painting. I did my academy here, and then I did Central St. Martin's master's degree in London. But I mean, I was just charmed by being a painter. Not that I only wanted to paint, but I like the liberty around the idea of being a painter, that freedom of just freedom of everything, existence of sorts. So that was what was actually charming me in wanting. I never knew how to paint, and still I'm trying to work my way how I haven't worked out my palettes yet. So but anyway, I enjoy that. I actually like that, and I'm interested. But in England, it was much easier because I didn't belong to the culture. I'm not a Norwegian when you look at me, and I don't blend in. I can do it in Basque country, but I can't do it in England. So I was always standing on the side, even though I was British from the very start, because I was married to an Englishman, a woman. But I was very sympathetic to culture. So and that's very important for an artist. You have to be sympathetic to your surroundings. If you're not sympathetic to it, you can't. You just, what are you going to do? I mean, I'm here, and it's my own culture, but I'm full of antipathy towards it. I actually think I don't actually want to have a show. I can't envisage anyone coming and actually being interested in seeing any. I mean, I came back, and all the people I knew that were sort of, like friends, or none has actually asked me, like, where have you been? What have you done? They're just not interested. So it's not a friend. People are not interested.
So do you think, there's something in this? Is it that, was it the freedom and the space around being an artist that initially got you interested, even as a child, or was it just purely the actual creation as a kid, and then you found the sort of the actual role of the artist, the life of the artist was a big pull, and maybe
That's why I found out in England, the
you
life
found that in England,
path.
right? So
I
then,
found it in England. But yes, when I was a little kid, like my cousin, my mom's twin sister's son, he was older than me, and he was he's an architect. So when he was doing this preliminary studies to get into the institution to study architecture, they have the academic drawing. Well, they used to have the academic drawing. So because I was so little, when my mom would go to see her sister, she would take me along. But my cousin wouldn't talk to me because I was so young. I was 6 or 5, 6 years. So 15, 16-year-old boy is not really going to sit around with a 6-year-old, is he? So, but I would go and look at his drawings of this like Socrates or Gatamelata or, all those sorts of academic drawings. So I would sit all the time that my mom was chatting and chatting with her sister. And I would be in the corners of the drawings, like trying to make the reproductions of his. So that was actually, yes, it was my something. It was, natural sort of strive to like, that liking of the shadow, that strich, or, like when the shape is sort of appearing in front of your eyes. Yes, but education-wise, my father wanted me. I was actually in the physical mathematical school here in Komarova School. It was one of the best mathematical schools in the whole Soviet Union. Still, it's like a couple of them are in Israel now because the director took the patent to Israel. He was a Jewish guy. And now this school is in Israel and one of the best mathematical schools. But so I was going to go to Bauman into Moscow to study further. But I was 15 when suddenly we had Soviet Union collapsed. We had the wars, what's happening now, for example, in Russia and Ukraine in 1984. Was it 84? Yeah. I mean, it happened in Abkhazia, which is now a separate part. I mean, it was always Georgia, but Russians rolled the tanks. It was not like now they're accusing the Ukraine, like, oh, you're sort of enlarging NATO. Yeah, okay, that's understandable. But NATO was not on the plan when they did exactly the same in 84 in Abkhazia. So suddenly those war situations, there's like national movements. So we all Georgians, we had like this sort of you'll call it nationalistic movement. We left the Russian schools, whoever, and we went to Georgian schools. And little did I know that, I should have stayed actually in the Russian school, for the education was much better in the Russian school because Georgian school was all like, cool boys and cool girls, and, dressed really well and push cars and gangster styles. And when the Russian school was actually producing a decent education, well, decent, what do they call pupils or whatever, abiturients in Russian. So things were getting, so I was actually going, and when that plan of my parents collapsed, because the country collapsed, and I couldn't go, money got devaluated. So my father was like, he was working all his life, and he was an engineer, and he would put aside from savings from his every month's salary. And there was some accumulation, not much, but for me to go and carry on studying in Moscow and being able, all that became like nothing. It was like monopoly money. Suddenly they gave us, they were called coupons, but it was just printed on both sides rather than monopoly money is only printed on one side. Same. So that's when I actually realized that, actually, I'd rather be a painter because everything else is so fucked up. So yes, that's when it has happened. When I was that collapse of the existing system, that you kind of feel like, okay, this is all, this is a country, this is a system. But no, it's actually not. I mean, they can just swap it. They can just take it like a rug out of your legs, from underneath your legs, and just go like, sorry, pound is not a pound anymore, and the heating that you are getting not coming again into your flat. And I mean, and COVID same sort of brought the same sort of narrative, but not brought, they just fucking bulldozed it in. And well, luckily England dropped it. Otherwise, everyone was really getting into it.
Yeah, a lot of people were over here. I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, it's interesting to hear you talking about this kind of inflation and sort of, the currency collapse, because it could be coming to us very soon, the way things seem to be shaping up. I mean, who knows? But it's fascinating to me to think about this, or putting myself into your position, and it almost feels like, as a way of surviving, you needed to become a painter or an artist, or to maybe unconsciously set in train the kind of the events that would lead you to get some kind of freedom by coming to England, where you could actually feel like there was some space for you to inhabit who you actually are. Um, does that make any sense? Because the other thing, what's also interesting, is the other thing that's happening here in England now is we are rapidly losing whatever freedom we had, is eroding rapidly now. And, censorship's increasing, control is increasing. There's a whole kind of move towards totalitarianism that's going on throughout the West now. And and people in the West don't understand what it's like to live in a totalitarian regime, or in a kind
Well,
of,
they don't. No, they
they
don't.
don't. But and this is the great tragedy. Even though we've been surrounded by it in history, people don't realize what they've got. As battered and as corrupt as our system is here, there's still a little bit of freedom left. And if we lose that, it'll be gone forever. Who knows? I mean, it'll be gone long enough that you'll wish, you were back in that time when it was free. And when I hear you and feel you as you're talking, I can sort of feel what that's like when that happens to your country, when the soul of your country is squashed or pushed down so much that people just become robots, or they switch off, or they're not interested in art
Well,
because,
they become so selfish. They become blind
yeah,
and deaf.
to survive,
They're like
right?
cursed. It's like a curse.
Mm.
You're sort of cursed into your, yeah, but that survival is not just the survival. It's like for example, now the Ukraine and Russia thing is going on. Georgia is sort of, on the periphery, some sort of sharing the same face, because we had the same thing in 2008, but the Russians actually managed what they wanted to do in Ukraine. They actually switched the government here. They brought the oligarch that is actually now is behind the stage, but he's inserting the whole government, and everyone does what he wants. So we're sort of doing what they got us. They don't need to roll the tanks in. I mean, no tanks can do the job that this government is doing actually for them. So suddenly, like, everything disappeared. Like, there's no sugar, for example, in the shops. And you're like, why? I mean, we don't have war here. But no, they're just so scared of, there's a panic sort of attacks, and they just panic shop They just go like panic, panic, panic. So I mean, it's not that they don't have, it's not just a survival that, that bit of bread, for you to sort of, or that bit of water for you to quench your thirst. Or no, it's just, oh, I may need it. You don't need it, but you're like a squirrel. You're a stupid squirrel. You're just stashing things. You're a mouse. You don't need all those nuts in the pipe. But because they're all in the ground anyway, in the garden. But no, they're going to squash it and just push it down their pipe, as many as they can. They may die before they eat or consume it, but no, so it's abnormal. It's completely irrational. So imagine if the nation has got a rationale anyway, and they're behaving even more irrationally. So it's like utopian, it's dystopian, the selfishness. It's just like no one's got an empathy towards anyone. No one will no one stops on the zebra drive. No one. Like the other day, they just young boys drive their push cars so happily and so merrily and so fast. It was on TV. An 8-year-old boy was standing waiting for a school bus. This car just smashed into him. His leg was amputated, and the boys in. So everyone is in there sort of. And that's what I'm scared. But in England, I still kind of feel like, well, look what has happened. In England, they were bringing the mandate, yeah, but they couldn't bring it because the people came out. London was able to do in 2 months, 5 times, 2 million people came out. They marched down. They went in front of BBC shouting all this, whatever they thought that, they had to shout. All NHS staff, they just went like, okay, you want to force that onto us? Okay, here's the uniform. They dropped their uniforms. I mean, I still believe that in the West, I mean, like Europe, and especially with Anglo-Saxon, with England. I don't mean Austria. I don't mean Germany, or, I don't mean those. They're odd countries. I mean, they were able to do crazy things, and they will be in future also able to do exactly the same sorts of crazy things. But with England, this is a different story. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I'd rather be naive.
Well, I sort of hope and feel that that's true to some degree, and yet right now they're trying to push through a bill in Parliament to make protesting illegal, like to stop it. I mean, it's unbelievable that this would even be
Yeah,
considered.
but that wouldn't happen.
Well,
They
who
will
knows? I
push,
mean,
they will try.
they've already brought in some emergency laws around what we've had the whole Extinction Rebellion thing going on.
I've heard
They've
about that.
actually brought in some and increased police powers in regard to that, and that there's definitely a push towards that, and there's not enough that I can see outrage at that or pushback. And it's partly because the media is so captured now by the corporations that you don't really get to hear about these things, or people are so overwhelmed by the next great fear thing. Like now we've got the war to think about, so that keeps us occupied so they can push through or try to push more stuff through. But there's definitely a trend towards increased control, increased restriction, and
China style.
it happened, yeah, and it happens slowly, and it happens almost invisibly, and it never gets rolled back. When we had all the kind of, when there was the 9/11 event in America, and then we had all the kind of terrorism laws come in England. Once they come in, they never take them back again. So, you get restricted, and then COVID comes in and you get squeezed a little bit more, and it keeps on happening, but it doesn't open up again. You know, and I do hope you're right that there's some kind of spirit within people um, that will not allow it to go too far. But I really don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, but
I
look at
don't see a
America
lot of
though. I mean,
evidence.
they're armed. People are armed. They have their farms. They've been like that. They got constitutionally a blessing to use it against their government. They're not gonna give in, man. They're
I
not.
guess maybe you're right. It's more of an urban problem because I think you're right. In the countryside, it will be very hard to kind of to push
Yeah,
control.
because urban. I mean, it's wishy-washy, man. When I came to England, okay, I knew the Soviet Union ended, and I came to United Kingdom, kingdom, and for me it was like, oh my god, I'm in the kingdom again. Lancelot, suddenly the knights and all this pathos about about whatever the kingdom was, and suddenly I entered the Central St. Martin's, and all my tutors were Marxists. And I was like, fucking hell, man. I came to England, run away from the fucking Marxists. And suddenly I go like, oh, they're like, oh, like, because it was a trendy thing for them to be a Marxist. Like here, it was like really trendy to be an anthroposophist and Steiner sort of thing and talk about, it was like Steiner thing here, but it was Marx in England. So that was like, well, I couldn't take it seriously, but I thought, well, maybe it will
Theo,
degrade somehow.
when are you talking exactly? Because I think
2003, I graduated.
yeah. So I was like my college time was 10 years before that. 1993, I was at St. Martin's, and it was just beginning to appear what you're describing. Because I can remember we were in the Charing Cross Road site, and I was on the painting course, and there was a sculpture there, there was fashion there. There was also this new subject which was called critical fine art practice.
Ah,
And that was the beginning
I
of
had critical framework.
no, this was pre that. It was critical
Okay.
fine art practice. But it had that feeling that I'm now seeing has completely run through academia. And I think that was the sort of the very, very first signs of it were appearing then. But it sounds like when you were there, it had already become quite established.
No, it was like, it was badged. I mean, they had like little sort of Marx thing. And well, I thought, well, maybe it's just a sentiment of some odd, eccentric artists, of some institutionalized people, and it will die out, and it will, something more sensible and something more profound and better and kinder or something will inherit that. But no, man. Little did I know that it was so like they said about the Stalin. Someone said about Stalin when Stalin died. Stalin actually didn't die, but he actually transcended into the future. That's what it was being said.
Well, it
Oh my
looks like
God,
it might
that
be
is
coming back
scary.
because it feels
That is
like
scary.
we're heading
Yeah,
that way
well,
now.
yeah, well, look at Klaus Schwab. He's got a Lenin statue when he talks, and from his apartment, like you have your, I don't know,
Really? Does he?
yeah. So
So do you think that he is Stalin reincarnated then?
no, 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 no. But he's definitely one of Schwonder's of Stalin.
Yeah.
I don't know,
It's
so
so
yeah, it was quite odd, but that was the reality about what I found there.
so then given what you've been saying about how selfish people are in the under the conditions that exist in Georgia, does that mean when Ukraine was invaded, people are people not really that interested then because they're so internal? There's no sort of what is the relationship between Georgians and Ukrainians, and how do they feel? What's the general kind of feeling, or is that all kind of privately, is there a sort of public display of what you're supposed to do and then a private one, or what?
Well, it's kind of split here, the opinion. Well, a rational thinking will go like, okay, this is strategy, this is unacceptable, because Ukrainians can decide their own fate. They can bring NATO, they can bring cabaret, whatever they want. I mean, that's what they want. If they want, they will do the money to the Russians. So it's up to them to decide what they want to do. But there is another thing that actually some conservative things take the Russian existence as a neoconservative thing, like against all the dirt that comes from the West, so to say, all the nonsensical things. And it does come from the West, actually, so much nonsense that people sort of on this side of the neck of the wood, they go like, no, they're really fucked up. Like if you look at the Americans, like talking about some Disney issues or Will Smith, I mean, it's a bored, neurotic, psychotic nation. I mean, it's obvious. Sorry to Americans, but that's how it is. So there is that sentiment, but it's not true. It's a tool to use politically against something, to use yourself as, I mean, how can Putin represent the conservative religious values? I mean, if you think of, he's a KGB officer. C'est fini. You can't be KGB. You can't be Christian, for example. It's just two impossible things. I mean, you can repent and stop being KGB and just go to the desert and become a Christian, or you can't just sit on the throne of KGB and wave
Theo,
crucifixion at me.
Do you think they were the two choices going round his head? Was he thinking like, oh, shall I roll the tanks into Ukraine, or shall I just go to the desert and repent? Do you think that was?
No, I think to be honest with you, I don't know. I think, in my opinion, it's pre-ordered, this thing. Someone is actually benefiting out of this very well. The same club that benefited out of 2 years of zastoy of COVID. Like
I know what you mean. It does seem like there's a lot of background fuckery going on, and it wouldn't at all surprise me if this wasn't something that was cooked up by people on both sides of the East-West divide. That some kind of there's so much going on right now. There's so many games being played, so many different layers, so many overlaps, and very little of it is what it seems to be. It's just the thing that kind of drives me nuts, really, and constantly astounds me is it's 2022, and if you look at history, we've done all of these things 1,000 times. We've fucked it up so many times. We've done dictatorships and totalitarianism, and we've done this corporate world raping machine so much now. Why have we not found a way, when most people, I would say maybe 99 or more % of the people on Earth, have no interest in the way the game plays. They just want to, have some freedom, be loved, leave the world a better place for their kids. You know, everybody's kind of like that, and yet we're locked into these patterns and systems which are so anti-life and so anti-human. And I don't understand why we're still, I mean, apart from the obvious thing, which is if people are scared, they revert to their baser instincts, and that's when they're most easily manipulated. And there's definitely evidence that we are kept in a perpetual
Well, it's
state of
Pavlovian
fear.
system, isn't it? I think it's called.
Pavlovian. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah,
how you get the dog to do
yeah,
things, you
yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
so it's the same thing. And I think it's engineered, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it's all engineered by clever clogs, evil clever clogs that think that they can decide for many, you know, what to do and where to go and how to be and
But what a
what's best for
horrible.
them. Because I'm pretty much sure that whoever is pulling those strings, they actually think they are doing a better picture. They're bringing a better
Yes,
picture.
I mean it must be the case, right? It must be that that is that state of consciousness is this is a better thing than what's going on or any alternative. But that's, I mean, that's so insane to me because the world is so beautiful, as we know. It's it's all there for us. It's so simple, and yet these power structures built on fear and manipulation and
Well,
control.
hate also. I mean, people
Hey,
hate
yeah,
each
yeah.
other. Racists hate races. I mean, nations hate nations. It's there, you know, but some hate more, some hate less.
Mm.
It's always on that sort of um, but you know, those are technocrats. They believe that there are, to make a better picture come true, you can actually, you know, for example, you come up to me and you say, okay, I got 100,000 people here from whoever knows where, and what shall we do with these people? I mean, we don't like these people, but the world will be, we kind of think like, oh, we don't like their color, or we don't like their culture, we don't like the, you know, their complexion, whatever, it doesn't matter. What shall we do? We either can sort of send them somewhere and, you know, find, but, you know, feed them, and, or we can kill them off. That's what the Germans said. They were like, okay, you know, let's kill them off, because that's a technical solution to something, and that's what the technocracy means. You have a solution without an empathy to a particular problem.
Mm.
So those people who are in charge, they are the technocrats.
Mm.
I mean, maybe, you know, they prefer gorillas in the jungles to the population of the country that jungle is in. So they will rather keep the gorillas and watch the gorillas swinging in the trees, but not see the people in the country, because, you know, people are more trouble and more, they
Mm.
produce more dirt. So they go like, okay, let's kill the people off, let's depopulate because it's too many of them. I mean, they talk about it, don't they? They talk themselves that it needs to be depopulated. It's too much of us, too many, as if they have made everyone and they've been busy in bed, you know, producing everyone.
Mm.
They decide face for everyone. They go like, okay, it's too many. I mean, what? How on earth they decide that it's too many? It's as many as God has allowed. This is God's world, not our world.
It's so
We'll
it's so interesting. It's like a handful of mentally ill people within a load of structures, a load of institutions, because this is the other part. It's not as simple as there are certain kinds of people. There are these kind of life forms on Earth which are institutions, states, cities, corporations. These are like living things that use the earth as a substrate to live off, and people are kind of like a part of them. A corporation, say, the way corporations have risen and become stronger and stronger and now are world dominating is a great example of that, because no, it's not a person or people that are in charge of a corporation. The corporation keeps on living when the people have left and died. It just brings in a certain kind of person that's suited to that environment, that has the right kind of mental illness, you know, to kind of perpetuate and grow itself. And it's these structures, these life forms, if you can call them that, which seem to be making use of a handful of people who have something wrong with them, that they don't feel what they're doing to the world. Those two things in tandem together are creating all of the problems, I would say, and driving us onto this kind of into this sort of catastrophic mess, because with all the technology we have now, with all the capability for fucking things up which we have now, the chances of us not becoming extinct are so low if we don't have the right institutions, systems, balanced, loving human beings behind it all. It's we've had it, so it fascinates me.
but I mean, look at where the culture is going now. I mean, we had states, we had governments. Government was sort of in charge. Well, not in charge, but sort of making. It was. It was. It had the role of an almighty God on earth. So it will be, there will be justice, there will be courts, it will. So it was replacing God on earth. That's why God, so it says, I've heard, that was not straightly involved in the affairs of the world. So the government was swapping those things, but now the governments are swapped by these abstract corporations who, God knows, believe in what. So if all this sort of history of the mankind, if all those renaissances and all this cultural, this progress, not the technical progress, not the one that is sort of, I can have a mobile 20 iPhone or something. If that hasn't produced, if Renaissance, if the Romanticism, if that hasn't really cured, say, sort of moved the mankind, it's absurd to think that, we're going to come out from this tunnel somewhere and there will be light and there will be love and there will be harmony. No, that is absurd. It's absolute gibberish. It will get worse and worse because the culture, and now we have like cancel cultures, we have everything. We have Facebook use, we have this sort of new meta generation that couples have relationship on virtual reality. I mean, it's just unglaublich. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. So, I mean, it's going to be like always. The kingdoms were perishing, but individual names were staying. I mean, if you look at the history, all the kingdoms perished, but some names have stayed. And those names are like beacons of light. And those names are of the survivors. So maybe that's the way forward. The individuals should survive to carry on some future individuals to brighten up, spark up and burn bright. For if there are any further more generations to come, God knows how many generations are left there to come into this nutty world. But I think that's what will happen. It will be always, and individuals will survive. Nations will perish, kingdoms will perish, cultures will perish. But that divine idea of a man that is created in divine God's image shall transcend, like God transcends. And I think, in my opinion, in my sort of, I know I'm almost like talking drunk here, but I do believe in that. That's what the future holds for us. It's not going to be salvation and freedom is the choice for not many. It's always been like that.
So that kind of what it brings up when I hear you talk like that is, I'm wondering, to kind of take us now somewhere completely other than the shit we've been in, because we're all well immersed in that. So how do you, in your life now, day to day, as you're living there with all those circumstances that you have to deal with, that everyone has their version of that in their lives, right? We all have our shit to deal with. It's all relative to our own lives. How do you find that light and that joy in your day to day, or where do you find it? Where do you access that feeling or those moments? How does that happen for you in your life at the moment?
In my personal life, at this present moment, well, I'm fulfilling one of the 10 commandments: respect thy parents. So I'm taking care of my mom, and I'm trying her to indulge and be happy and be comfy, as much that she deserves. And which is kind of, if I sort of think in my selfish way, yeah, it's got my life is sort of put aside. I really don't, I'm not like what I'm used to think of myself, or like a painter and waddling through the woods of England and landscapes of Albion, and sort of rolling around on the beaches and drawing and walking the dog and things like that. So that's all gone. It's not there. Well, it's not gone, but it's not around me anymore. So, but it's this sort of new reality. So I guess it's, I'm like this Mercury around the sun, which is my mum. My orbit is rather small, and but I go around it. It burns me, but it's got its benefit. At least I see the light. So maybe that will sort of benefit further in the future when I'm on my own. Maybe in my selfish, silly way, I sort of go like, okay, maybe this will grant me some bigger happiness, or commune me to some newer mystery of life. Or so, yes, it's just simple responsibilities, but simple human responsibilities. Fulfilling them. That's all I can say. It's got nothing to do with art. It's got nothing to do with anything else. I'm Christian, but I'm a very bad Christian. I'm not fasting. I'm not doing this. I'm smoking. I'm doing all sorts. But at least I know that I'm bad Christian. But I do know that I'm still Christian. So yes.
Is there any kind of is the Orthodox Church still at all happening in Georgia? It's there.
Yeah, big time, man.
Oh, it is.
It's very good business to be in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's a big business, is it?
it's a big business, and it's Putin's business as well, I
Okay.
must admit.
But within that, is there anything for you within that? Can you still access, you know,
Well, no, I
the
don't have
true
a
religion
confessor.
or not?
No, I wish I had a confessor. No, I don't. I don't trust. Simply, I don't. I can't invest in inventions of deceiving myself that I can actually go and pretend that I entrust my confessions to a costume that reminds me of a monk, or it's a masquerade. It's I don't know. I can't get my head around it.
What about
Basically, I worked out that I don't know. We are a very old Christian nation. Yes, 314 were officially. First was Armenia, the second Christian kingdom there was in the history of the mankind. It's us, the Iberia.
right?
So it's us, yes. But actually, we're so godless people. We don't have idea. We can't even be terrorists, man. I mean, we don't believe in anything. Do you understand? We don't even have a sect. We can't be Jesuit. We can't be Calvinist. I mean, Dutch can be Calvinists. Afghans can be Talibans. I mean, but we just want to eat, drink well, dress well, sit in the cafes. I don't know. We don't have an idea we
For
don't
you,
believe.
Theo, for you personally, though, can you go into those buildings, which, even if the people in there are just acting, what about the places themselves? Is there any feeling that you
You
can
mean
connect
churches?
with? Yeah, with if they, because there must be some ancient sites there, right, that have had.
There are, but I'd rather see the ruins. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've spent too long in England, and like English. I mean, like I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was sort of trying to explain what the English actually believed in, and I was saying that like, okay, for example, Canterbury or Westminster Cathedral and all of that is not actually. It's not actually a holy site, or it's sort of a historical site where the history has developed. But for English, it's more like some old tree, an oak tree, deep rooted something is more holy and more alive with some divinity than the Canterbury Cathedral, for example, which holds only the history, which is revered in England. So yes, in ruins I see the grace, but I've heard that I've heard from the ecclesiastical congregation, I mean people who are priests or monks, that if you are not fulfilling those apostolic, whatever you are supposed to do as a priest, or then the grace evaporates.
Mhm.
So have you been to Anglican churches recently?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like a skeleton. There is not much grace there. Is there architecturally maybe some time, history? Well, that's no grace. It's just the wall that is old. So tells you that is old, and it's history, and it's the history. It's not the grace. So
Yeah.
it's the same happens here. The grace leaves and it evaporates. So I feel the same. I feel the same when I look at the priests. They're deprived of their social status, even though they're dressed as such. And they don't read Philokalia, for example. They just preach something that is just not essential to anything. I have sort of witnessed few, but I don't go there because I fall into judgment. I fall, and to avoid that, I deprive myself of.
It's your neighbor.
Oh yes, it's this woman. But so basically, yes, it's sort of, it's difficult. So I have my collection of icons, and I have. ვიოდეიდა მაპატი ტელეფონის იმაზე ვარ, ინგლისთან ვაპარაკობ და დაგირეკავთ. კი, 1 საათია ვაპარაკობ. კარგი, იცით რა, ჩემ მეგობარს ჩამოვაგზავნე. კი. She wants to send something, but anyway, so I was saying that I don't know. It's quite difficult to. It's good to have a confessor because everyone needs an advice of an elder, of someone who is saintly. You know, someone you need like a painter. You need a teacher to teach you. You need the guidance. We do need, like child needs parent or a godfather or an uncle or a good old neighbor, someone, some good man to sort of take care of that lost young soul. It's very difficult without it. And even though I'm not young, yes, I still need some guidance. But unfortunately, I don't have it. I can't find it. I have found it long time in Western Europe. I have found some monks. Well, particularly one monk. He was German. He was Orthodox. Archimandrite. And he was the only saint that I actually ever came across. But I'm very lucky that I can think. People can think of me crazy, but I think I can't, I like Giordano Bruno. I can't deny the fact that I have met the saint. It's like he couldn't deny the fact that the world was going around. I can't deny either. So yes, I have met, and that is sort of, that memory is still sort of, is there. But I was lucky. Not many are able to have such a witness in their life, witness something. But I don't know, God wills, and I will meet another soul that will, I can entrust my fears or, ask for advice or, because we all need it. We all need it.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult times. Apocalyptic, I must say. And it's getting worse and worse.
It's not dull, that's for sure.
Definitely, even though it shines.
Pressure's on. Yeah.
Anyway, Tim, I think shall we call it?
Yeah, we're good.
And let's hope that, some divine interaction, so we'll do something to this silly, crazy world and put things in order, because governments can't do it anymore.
No.
They're up to mischief.
No, they never could. It's always been up to us, like you're saying. I think we as individuals, all we can do is just what we can do within our own lives, right? Within our own reach and what's around us and how we behave.
Exactly. That's all we can do.
That's where the focus is. And for me, it's also community, even extended community like this, maintaining, giving some energy to those connections. It's important too, I think.
Absolutely right, sir.
This is how we negotiate and navigate these times, I think.
Let's think of ourselves as lucky that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Lots of gratitude as well. And the world is beautiful
exactly.
still. And, you know, every day you go out there and it's fucking beautiful. So soak it up while
And
you
it's so
can.
lovely that you're out in the countryside. You're in Norfolk.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, lots of love
All
to
right.
you. And
Yes.
yeah,
God bless. And it was
hopefully
lovely
I get you
to
to,
be able to
hopefully we get
fulfill.
to
We
meet.
wanted to do this for a long time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. And well, send me some results. Sorry.
I'll send you the results. The results from the lab test will be
Oh
coming
yes.
your way
Yeah. Is it
soon.
positive or negative? Yeah.
All right. Take care,
All
yeah?
right. All
I'm
right.
just gonna stop it now, but we'll say
Okay.
goodbye properly.